Alexis Barad-Cutler, thank you so much for joining me today. I've been such a fan of yours for years. I didn't know it was you because on Instagram, I followed you on I followed you on Not Safe for Mom group, and it's just like such a beautiful community. I would love for you to introduce yourself to the listener.
Sure. I'm Alexis Barad-Cutler. I am a mom of two. I have an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. I describe myself as a writer by trade. I'm a journalist. I'm a children's book editor, children's book writer, a ghostwriter, and now I write narrative, nonfiction, memoir type stuff.
So cool.
And Not Safe for Mom group, I started maybe in 2018 because I felt like at the time on Instagram there was just the aspirational mom, you know, the beautiful countertop and the kid and the, you know, beautiful there's like ruffles on everything that they're wearing and
they're running in grass a lot.
Running in grass and the mother looks perfect, and there were a couple other
that mother like never yells. She never loses her.
No, she gets down on
and
the
she's
level.
rich.
So rich.
She loves her husband.
Her husband's hot.
The
in
sex
shape.
they have,
very
one can
great.
only imagine.
Yes. And so I was hating myself. Like at this point, I had postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety and psychosis and like all that crap. I hated my baby. Thought he was going to kill me.
The first one.
My first one, yeah. I thought he was really trying to kill me. We can go into that some other time or later. But I needed a space that reflected back to me the experience that I was having. And that's essentially what Not Safe for Mom group is about, is highlighting the stickier, uglier, messier parts of motherhood and providing a space for people to say what they really want to say within the comfort of anonymity, because you can just write to us and we'll post it on your behalf anonymously.
So people don't necessarily comment because you can see who is commenting like, yeah, I feel that way too, but they'll DM you?
We get like 100 DMs a day.
Wow. How do you keep up with that?
I have a person who reads my DMs.
Wow.
My community manager, Julian, is amazing. And she not only reads them, but she responds. And people expect her voice now, you know, when they're writing to us. So,
well, I once was in your DMs about I was taking 5-HTP while I was pregnant with my daughter, and it was like I was so nervous because it was like I was almost done with my pregnancy, and I don't know. I was like, no one's helping me out, and I had reached out to you. You said that your dad is like an OBGYN.
Yeah, he's a fertility specialist and reproductive endocrinologist.
Well, that's very
it is
nice.
It is.
Convenient.
Well, I wanted to be a gynecologist.
Oh. You're like very into women?
Women's health, yeah.
Really?
And reproductive health, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How does that like sort of bleed into your life now, do you think?
Well, I started, I co-founded a nonprofit this year with a bunch of other women in the motherhood space you probably know, CEOs, thought leaders, writers, doctors. It's called the Chamber of Mothers. And the 3 pillars that we're focusing on are maternal health, affordable childcare and quality childcare, and paid leave.
Wow.
And those all kind of wrap into one another and are so interconnected. So
how do you go about making change?
Well,
what do we do?
Right. So a lot of women, including me, until I got into this work, thought that change was something done by people in power and, you know, basically 50 to 60-something white men. But when we started telling women on Instagram, like, here's the problem, here's who we need to mention, for example, we can actually make something happen. And so we created this viral campaign when we first started, when paid leave was cut from Build Back Better. And it really spread like wildfire to the point that other advocacy organizations were saying, like, who are these people? Because we were each able to reach our communities. And so every day, the everyday mom, once she has the information, she knows what to do with it. So instead of just being angry and being sad, you realize, okay, who am I voting for? What does that mean? What do they stand for? How do their values align with mine? Like making women more informed about policy can create change. And you don't have to be marching in the street to do it.
Although marching in the street is nice.
It's great.
Sure.
It feels good.
It feels good, but you might have to go to the grocery store to feed your children. And on the line at the grocery store, you can mention these people, right? You can do something while you're living your life.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how Instagram, I like poo-poo it all the time, but it's like a really strong tool, huh?
It is. It can be a force for good, and that's how I've been experiencing it and leveraging it. And there are more people that want things to change than we think and that are willing to help. We have thousands of women wrote to us what can I do? What can I really do? I want to help. I want to do something. The great thing is that there are people who've been doing this work for so long. We're not the first advocacy group, but what we're hoping to do is to uplift the messages of existing organizations like Planned Parenthood and Moms Rising and Everytown, because if they have a message, it's in a little silo. But we can be from our 20 women who are part of this team, broadcast it to our individual communities. And so then it creates a ripple effect. And then suddenly everyone's like, oh, I know what Everytown's about, or I know what Moms Rising is now. And we just can reach more people because we have a different reach.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's this idea that oh no, they've already done it. I can't step on anyone's toes. But when it comes to these very important issues around women's rights and women's health, I think each one of us has a different story, a different audience, and a different way of connecting. And we're not stepping on toes. We're marching together.
We're really working together.
Yeah.
And it's been interesting too because it's a non-hierarchical organization. So no one's really in charge, which is
so feminine,
awesome, but also hard.
It's hard, yeah.
But we try to describe ourselves as a flock of birds, where there's someone in the front of the V, and sometimes you need to fly to the back of the V, right? My whole family has COVID, or I have a huge deadline. So I wonder if so far it's working. I wonder if this success can mean something for other organizations to be more V-led.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Oh, I like that. When I'm on set, either directing or acting, it's always really interesting to have a director who's a woman. It's rather V-led. Yeah. There's always someone. Here we are in the loving arms of our executive producer Laura Lucetti. There's always a very feminine sort of embrace that's just a little different. And it's not that I'm not ragging on a more masculine way of leading, but
maybe we can embrace more feminine into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to talk about you.
Okay.
I want to pivot and talk about you.
It.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. How did you go from postpartum psychosis to this postpartum sort of empowerment? We're still postpartum. That's
Very
an
much.
Interesting idea, actually. We are still post this big event that has happened, and right now I'm finding you in such power and such leadership, and also and I did find you on Instagram, so look at that. But I also find your edginess. It didn't go away in motherhood, which I find really inspiring because I also am edgy.
Yes, you are.
I am genuinely and deeply motivated and moved by the experience of being a mother. For me, that can feel at odds. Hearing you say, I'm a children's book writer and I'm this matriarch of the Not Safe for Mom group. Can you tell me how you marry those two sides of yourself, or is that just natural for you?
Well, empathy has always been very natural for me. Trying to understand how people feel and wanting to make them feel lighter. I've just been doing that since I was little, to a detriment, right? Taking on too many of other people's feelings can really weigh you down. So that was a journey in leading this community and learning what I can do to lessen the emotional load. to go back to your first question, which was like, how did you get from postpartum psychosis and like helplessness and overwhelm to a feeling of power? I think that there are a couple things. I was not in a good place because I was so unsupported when I became a new mom. We were the first people in our friend group to have kids and didn't know at all what to expect. Didn't even think that much about like, why are we having children? It was just what you do. It's like I'm gonna meet a nice Jewish guy, and then I'm gonna get married, and everyone's gonna be there, and then about a year later we're gonna start trying. Oh, and we got a dog, you know. And then it wasn't until years later I was like, why did I have like what was my reason for having children? I didn't even really. It just was what one did in my head, and we didn't think about having a nanny. We didn't think about my postpartum care. We didn't think about ever having a C-section. And I had an emergency C-section with my first and then a planned with the second. And day 3, I think we were hosting Rosh Hashanah. Like it was
Day 3 after you had a baby.
Yes. Yeah. After I got home from the hospital. And I was doubled over, you know, my stomach was still distended. It hurt to move, and I was doing laundry and going up and down the stairs. Like nobody knew. We have to take care of her, and we also have to help preserve her sleep. So a lot of postpartum psychosis and depression can happen when you're dead sleep deprived, right?
Yeah.
And my husband has a big job, and he was like, I can't really help you at night. And that was a huge blow, like a gut punch. I was like, wait, what? And he's like, well, this is your job and this is my job.
Yeah.
Luckily, he has grown so much from those days, but at the time, that's where we were. And I felt like such despair. And it wasn't until I went to see my OBGYN, who I love, and it was like a visit, maybe 2 months out. And she was like—
The 6-week visit?
I had to go back a couple times. But this visit, she looks at me and she's like, where did you go? And I said, what do you mean? And she's like, the light went out. You were such a light. Like your whole pregnancy, you were just so happy, and I don't see you anymore.
Thank God for her.
Oh, my God. And that's when I realized, oh, what I'm going through isn't something that I made up or that I'm creating. It's actually a thing. And she asked me questions like from a checklist. And I was like, yes, yes. Are you reading my diary? Like it was nuts. And this is 10 years ago. We still weren't talking about postpartum depression. It was taboo.
Yeah.
Now it's like, here's my postpartum depression story. Here's my blog. Here's my line of clothes for it.
Yeah, but I think part of the reason why Laura and I were so into this for the Mom Curious podcast is like, I don't think people before they get pregnant do think about, you know, what it's like. And also maybe they don't want to. They don't want to. They have a life to live. They have careers they have relationships. They have stuff going on. But if there's anyone out there who just has the hint of like, oh, I've had depression before, or gee, I'm called to understand what this is, or I've had health issues before, I want to make sure that I take care of my body, like at least they can click on somewhere and hear someone's firsthand account on how to get to power. You know, I don't know how long it took you. How long did it take you to get to this? Or is it still an unfolding?
It's absolutely something that unfolds, and it gets just so much easier to feel powerful when your kids aren't physically demanding from like your body and your arms and your back and all of your attention and time because you're afraid that your toddler's going to like fall down a staircase. Like my kids are 8 and almost 11, and that has – I mean, I look at my friends who are still in the thick of it, and I just keep on saying, it gets better, I promise. It gets better. Because then they wake themselves up in the morning, they get themselves cereal, they put the TV on.
What?
Yes. Yeah. It's amazing.
Wow.
I mean, if you need to rely on iPad, there's nothing wrong with it in my mind. Then they'll
Nothing
read
wrong.
for 2 hours later that night and put themselves to sleep.
Wow.
And I'm
Weird.
like, doesn't anybody need me anymore? So I'm getting
Wow.
a puppy because I'm feeling like
What
I'm
happened to
too
that
free.
dog?
My Ernest
Died.
he passed last
Sorry.
July.
I'm so sorry. Get that dog.
I'm getting my new dog.
A
Took a year.
puppy?
A puppy.
A puppy's like a baby. A puppy's going to keep you up at night.
I'm
Just
excited.
a heads up.
I know.
Puppies are a real thing.
I'm ready.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Just not for another baby. So
Yeah. So how is your relationship with your son now?
It's night and day. I never could have imagined when I was a new mom and he's lying, I put him on the counter, in like a bunch of blankets so I could wash the dishes. And I remember looking into his eyes and thinking, he's planning my demise. He's planning it. And it just seemed like the only logical thing. Why would you make me feel like I'm going to die? Like you came and now I feel like I'm going to die. It must be coming from you. I mean, it's crazy. But that's I really thought that he had some kind of ulterior motive as like a 4-month-old.
Wow.
Yeah. And it took medication.
Yeah.
It wasn't – I don't even know if I'd be here. When you start to have these irrational thoughts, like what would happen if I just pushed the stroller into the, street? Those are real things that happen, that can happen when you have postpartum depression, anxiety, psychosis, and
I would feel so afraid all the time that I would by accident drive into like that was so scary to me all the time. I mean, sleep deprivation is a form of actual torture.
It is, and I've spoken to so many women who've said, "I'm afraid because today I was driving and I just thought, what would happen if I drove off of this bridge with my baby in the back?"
Right.
Not as I hope it doesn't happen, but a curiosity.
Oh wow!
What would happen if I just drop the baby onto the subway tracks? Like terrible things.
Yeah.
But they're real, and people feel so guilty for having these thoughts. The one great thing about intrusive thoughts is that usually you're not going to act on them. But they're so pervasive that they can ruin your life. And it takes serious support and help to get out of that.
Support, right? We don't act on them. Many of us don't act on them because we have enough support, privilege, money, people who love us.
Even with all the privilege in the world, if you have a partner who doesn't believe in medication, like antidepressants, because you're breastfeeding and there's like, well, I don't know. What about the Zoloft stuff? Like this could get into the breast milk and then our baby. And then you're like, okay, then let's formula feed. And then they're like, have you read the ingredients on this formula? And you're just like, I don't know what you want me to do.
Right. And by the way, that partner is not your boss.
Yes, that's a very good point.
Straight up.
But they're like, this is half my baby.
Sure. And you're totally undermined by hell in your head. So you might think this person is your boss. Also, they're the only person you're seeing like as much as the baby. I mean, you're impressionable. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're impressionable and weak. And we've been also fed that our husbands, partners are boss-like figures. They're not. Just putting that out there.
Some of them are figures. It's just whether you treat them like they're your boss is the other thing. That's self-important, what I mean.
Yeah. I mean, when you're that sick, and it is sick, right?
Yeah.
Like when you're that sick, like it's hard to love yourself.
Yeah.
You're like looking outside, like, do you love me? Are you going to give me the right answers? Right?
Yeah. Or at least support me while I find the answers. So I knew that I needed to get some help. And I had been on medication. I'd had depression in my life, so it wasn't like a brand new thing. But going on medication while breastfeeding was a concern. So my good friend, who's also my husband's friend, she really saved my life because she told my husband that she also suffered from postpartum psychosis. And this is someone he really trusts. And she's like, I was eating staples.
Okay.
She was eating sharp objects. That's a thing. And
to feel something?
I don't know. It's just a compulsion that she had after she had her baby.
Wow.
And maybe like pica, people who eat dirt and stuff.
I've never actually heard of that.
Oh, yeah. Some people eat sand. Some people eat dirt. It's called pica.
That's like a sensory input experience.
Yeah. But like sharp objects going down your throat, I couldn't. But she went and saw this psychiatrist, a reproductive psychiatrist, and she's like the happiest and most wonderful person. Like she's back to herself.
Yeah.
And so she's like, maybe Alexis should go see that person. And so he came with me, and the psychiatrist said, so here's your choice. Your wife can go on this medication and feel better, or she might kill herself. What would you like, And he was like, okay, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, now he's such a big supporter of mental health and therapy and medication, but
You guys have been on a real journey.
for sure. Yeah.
11 years is a long time, but it could have just flatlined,
Yeah.
It could have stayed the same. And it does
took
seem
a
like
lot.
you've been through a lot, and you've come out the other side really strong and
Yeah.
beautiful.
And my kid, Julian, was like a real sensory kid, sensory averse and colicky, never
Great.
slept.
Great. Thanks.
You bring him to the party, he'd be I need to go home now. Like, people stopped inviting us to birthdays because it was like, what's even the point? And now he's like this amazing, confident 10-year-old who did virtual interviews for private school and did some modeling, and he likes being part of the party or the first person to start a conversation. And he's so patient and kind and caring. I never would have imagined him turning out to be this way. But
People change, right?
people change.
Adults change. People change.
Yeah.
Like I always get sort of tickled by when my son is the exact same as when he was a baby. I think that's really cute. And it makes me feel like, ooh, I knew it, and I was listening, but people change. It's actually really nice to know that your relationship has changed also, because because it's nice. Because
But what doesn't change, so maybe something that's sensory averse, someone who's sensory averse might later become the deepest empath because they're taking in so much from their surroundings. It's a lot of input, right?
I have a lot of input. I once had a brain scan, and it was like the amount that I hear, see, touch, taste, it is so much. Actually, Laura tells me that after these days of interviews, she's like, can you please take care of yourself? And I say, sure. She's like, please, you were so empathetic. You're beautiful work, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Can you please take care of yourself? 2 days later, I will be laid out.
Yes, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
And I'll be like, I don't know why. Well, yeah.
That's what happened during the pandemic with Not Safe for Mom group, because every day was worse and worse. And I'm getting these DMs from women being like, now my boss is expecting me to do the same work day. I'm taking care of 3 kids, and I'm also doing virtual school for 2 of them, and one of them is a needy toddler. I'm losing my mind. Or then their husband loses their job. What the hell are they going to do? How are we going to people couldn't pay to keep the lights on. And and then people who were in the middle of IVF and all of those things that got interrupted. I was receiving these messages, and it just felt like they were all sitting on my head.
Right.
And I started to get depressed.
Right.
And I wasn't functioning.
Yours. And
it wasn't
yours.
mine. No.
Well, thank God it wasn't yours.
Thank God. It was lucky.
Yeah.
Very lucky.
And I understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad you have that person who reads the DMs now.
Yes. Julian, I could not live without.
A different Julian.
Yes. Her name is Julian.
Oh, well, there you go.
She's in Canada. And
love a Canadian.
Yeah, she is my right-hand person, and the first person on the team, really. And just one of the OG mom group ladies.
Wow.
Yeah. Actually, my whole team came from Not Safe for Mom group.
Really? Mm-hmm. I want to talk about your second child.
Yes.
How was that experience from the get?
Such a different kid.
And such a different you,
Such
no?
a different
You were already
me.
on Zoloft.
Yes, I was on Zoloft. I stayed
God
on
for
it.
Zoloft.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Really, for me, a lifesaver, and for a lot of people I know. And also I learned from the first time that I need support. Yeah. So I got a night nurse.
Yeah.
I got a nanny. I knew that after a C-section, I'd have to rest. There were just things that now I was armed to do and to know. And at first, my husband's like, I don't really want someone in our house. But then, this woman, Clavia, our night nurse, was so amazing. I still recommend her. It's 8 years later. And he saw, oh my God, this is saving our marriage. Both of us sleeping and having dinner together. What a blessing. Yeah. And so to have a stronger partnership, to have a stronger sense of self, better health, all of that, I I think is why I look back at Gavi, my second-born, as being like such a positive motherhood experience. Like they just were always, my friends would call Gavi the happiest baby in Brooklyn because they were just like a delight, like always smiling. And it makes a difference, when you have like a happy baby.
It does make a difference, of course.
So Gavi, I'm saying they because their pronouns are they, them.
Yeah.
Which they announced to us during the pandemic when they were in first grade.
How did they even know?
Well, since they were 3, we knew that Gavi was different.
Since they were born, they were different than your first.
Very different, but like different from a lot of other kids that we knew. Would gravitate towards dolls, art, My Little Ponies, doll houses, dress up, fairies, ballet, but ballet in a tutu,
I saw videos of them before the pandemic.
Yeah.
Dancing around your apartment in a tutu, and I thought, oh my God, what a great mom. What a cool kid. Yeah. It was a little bit of a reveal. It's not like you outed them, but I follow you pretty closely, and it was interesting to watch.
I mean, it was interesting to experience as a parent, and then with the lack of support again around us, like our family members weren't like great, so happy that they found who they are. Like it's still a journey, and they were the first kid in school, in their school, to wear a dress to school. There was no literature, no picture books about being non-binary or trans. And we live in Brooklyn, you would think, but it's. I had to give the teacher all of the books this year and last year, and luckily we had teachers that embraced it, and especially this year in second grade, this teacher made such an effort. Like the pronoun thing was not easy for her.
I don't think it's easy.
It's not easy.
Yeah,
it's not easy. But she tried so hard, and then the kids. They all got it like this, and then be like, Miss Melissa, no, remember they, them. But the way that I think Gavi came to it was we just constantly supported them in what they asked for. And it wasn't like the minute Gavi said, I want to wear a dress, we were like, great, let's go shopping. Like,
right.
It definitely took us time. We'd be like, you can wear this at home. And then when we saw that they didn't want to be a different person outside of the home, we'd be like, you want to wear this tutu thing?
God. They're
sure.
so intact. They're so intact. I don't want to be a different person outside that I am inside.
Would you?
No. No. I mean, I'm socialized to behave, I guess, a different way at home. But gosh,
yeah,
it's not right.
No.
And they knew that.
And people are like, you're indulging, Gavi. And I'm like, in being happy? I don't quite understand. And, well, life is going to be hard for them. Life is hard for everybody.
Life is hard.
And
if this gives them joy, then and they have access to joy.
Yeah.
Isn't that what we want?
But books really help. So
okay, yeah. So what books?
So we had a house for everyone. I can give you my favorite list of books for your starter non-gender conforming child, or your mom who doesn't get it at all. I gave my parents the picture books, yeah, because they explained it so clearly. There's that book with the kid who has the dress and wants to wear the dress to school, and Jacob's new dress, and then Jacob's room to choose, and there's so many wonderful books, and we just read these books like we would read our book about marching, and our book about sharing and feeling, all that stuff. And I think that you're not so listen, you could choose between being trans, or you could be non-binary, you could be binary, we didn't even have to do that. You just read, and then eventually they absorb what they need to, and they cling to the things that they feel, and I'm talking about children right now when I say they, resonates with them most.
So you knew that Gavi was a little different when he at the time was 3. I would just assume he was gay.
Gender is different from
Tell
sexual
me.
orientation.
Yeah, tell me.
So gender, your gender identity is the gender with which you identify most. So you feel like a girl.
I feel like a girl enough.
You feel that the sex that you were assigned at birth is reflected in your identity.
I mean, I'm a special case, but sort of.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So people listening, many people, because it's just the norm.
I mean, I guess I'd shrug my shoulders and say, yeah.
Okay. And
Enough.
Right.
Yeah.
Enough that it doesn't, like when you look in the mirror,
No, I
you
don't
want to
have-
tear your skin off kind
I
of
don't
thing.
have gender dysmorphia.
Okay.
No.
I'm not an expert. I'm just saying this is what I know.
Yeah.
But sexual orientation is completely different. I mean, first of all, at age 3, at age 6, children don't have sexuality.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's not even on their minds, like, who am I attracted to?
Right. So when I say a 3-year-old is gay, well, they don't have sexuality to be a homosexual.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So when you come into your own sexuality and your sexual identity, then you can decide, who you're more attracted to.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of gender identity, it's this feeling of, for Gavi, it's I sometimes feel like a boy and I sometimes feel like a girl. So that's where the non-binary comes from. If they felt like more of a girl, if they were like, I always feel like a girl, then their gender would be female.
Yeah.
Their sex assigned at birth was male, but their gender would be female if they wanted to be, if they didn't want to be, if they knew that they were female. It's just something you know.
Yeah.
And then that would be considered trans, a trans girl.
Yeah.
And
even if you don't take any action on that,
if you feel that
feeling,
way,
if you identify as trans.
Yeah. Well, if you don't take any action, if you're not supported at all, if your parents are like, I want you to play softball and you have to wear that shirt with the mitt on it and say mommy's little dude, and we don't do this in our house and you can't dance and you can't sing and whatever it is, you would have the most unhappy kid. And that leads to depression later in life and suicide.
Yeah.
In kids that aren't supported in their gender identity.
Did it ever feel hard for you to support them?
It feels hard because the world is not built for kids like Gavi. So, like, I go to a restaurant. Am I going to give a lecture to the waiter? Like, oh, when we say they, we just mean this one. Like,
wow.
It's hard. But I'm not going to say he just to make the waiter happy.
No.
So sometimes I do explain it. I'm like, oh, their pronouns are they, them. So they're going to have da-da-da-da-da.
Great.
Yeah.
And the waiter likely doesn't care. I mean,
doesn't care.
But it's on the same page. But no, it doesn't care in terms of like, isn't going to give you pushback. It's kind of.
Right. It's a transaction.
Yeah.
That's maybe the simplest hard thing.
But it's hard.
But it's hard because, like, if I let that go, then Gavi doesn't feel seen. It would be like if your name is Danielle and everyone's like, Daniel would like, you'd be like, that's not my fucking name.
Yeah.
If
my own parents would say my name wrong, that would be really hurtful.
It would be so awful, right?
Hurtful, really? It would really hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And then it's just hard because there's not, they're like the only one in their class.
But even when I would watch those videos of Gavi earlier on, they're the only one because they're it.
They're the only Gavi.
Yeah. Like, there's got to be that.
That too.
There's that too.
Yeah, they're just their own person.
Special, right?
It's hard to, all children are special, but it's hard to describe Gavi and people be like, oh, I recognize that. I know that person,
Yeah.
Yeah, I call him like my magic pixie child.
I know we're wrapping up, which is like I could talk to you forever.
Wow, that went by really fast.
It did go by really fast.
Yeah.
This is my disappointed sound. I'm like, oh no, there's more. There's got to be more. Maybe you'll come on again.
I'm happy to.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking all those questions.
Which ones? Oh, the hard ones where I'm like wrong.
No,
and I say
about first of all about
sometimes I'm wrong.
psychosis, about anxiety and postpartum, and then asking about how did you know and what's it like to not feel supported, and what's the difference between gender identity and sexual identity. Those are really great questions, and I wasn't born knowing them.
Yeah, what I'm learning in this process is that like I have to ask. Yeah. If I really want to understand, if maybe one of my children is non-binary, if maybe one of the children, of the parents listening or the soon-to-be parents listening is non-binary, I got to ask, like if I'm going to be wrong. Sometimes I say things that may insult, but it always comes from love. So I don't think it ever does insult my guests, but I just feel like people don't know.
If you come from a place of curiosity, there's another way of pretending that you're curious but being antagonistic.
Oh.
Yeah. In my day, we just, how come all of my peers are not suffering from depression and they were gay and like no one identified as non-binary when I was younger and they're fine and it's like, how do you know?
How do you know if they're fine?
That wasn't an opportunity. There wasn't an option. So sometimes I get like cross-examined with the implication that like I created this.
Oh, it's probably because I really see this beyond gender and I really honor you as a mother. Like I really see you as someone who's, supporting this child who, as we say, every child is special, like each person is so individual. And the fact that you could see that, love that, support that, no matter what is so inspiring to me. Whether he, they, she, anyone is dealing with their gender, their sexuality, when we're talking about like the interests of children, they matter. Mm-hmm. When we talk about like the way a child identifies, I'm a dancer. If you take that seriously, that's what moves me most. I mean, I think, of course, it's an interesting topic when we talk about, gender and all of this, but to really be a supportive mother like that, that's inspiring.
It's really cool to also have a supportive dad.
Yeah? What's that like?
They get mad on your kid's behalf. If we have a family friend who's like, I went to his bar mitzvah, I saw his schmeckle, he's a boy.
Okay.
And so my husband will be like, this is really inappropriate and that's not correct. And, he'll get so angry in a way that I'm really proud of. And then he'll address that issue. So it's really nice. He took Gavi to get their first dress. Yeah.
Where?
Uniqlo.
Nice. I'm sure there was like a huge education for you on this because even though it's like intuitive to you, it seems to be intuitive to you to like let people be who they are and let people be different. You do that in your work. And you obviously are doing that in your home. But if there are some, resources that you can share with the listener around this, because there are probably people in the Midwest who are just like, who are those mommy bloggers that we were talking about in the beginning, who are just like, like run-of-the-mill mom has a boy, thinks they're going to have a young man one day. Like,
yeah.
What do we say to her?
It's really wonderful to live in a world of possibility and curiosity and to let our children unfold as themselves. They know who they are. They really know who they are from a very young age, and they are telling you. And so to be open to listening, I think, is one of the best things you can do as a parent.
Are there support groups around this experience?
There's the Ackerman Institute is in New York, and they do a lot of great groups and therapy for families of kids with different gender identities or not conforming gender identities, and also gay people, and maybe the dad is is just came out. You know, they have all kinds of things around this. I've never used them. I found Instagram is really helpful.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Instagram. What a plug for Instagram today.
And actually Twitter, not Twitter, TikTok is great for educating because they have like little snippets. And so, you know, you look at like non-binary kid or LGBTQ rights and you can find things. But books are really the best. And I'm going to give you a list of some of my favorite books. And I think that books are a really great place to start.
So grateful. Thank you.
And then another book that I have that helped me for parents about I think it's called the Gender Creative Child.
Because the truth is, I don't think they're like that. You know, that the younger generation is as confused as we are. Certainly, as our as our parents are.
Yeah, we're learning a different language. It's a completely different. Like even in college, if there was someone who expressed their gender identity as like male, we would just be like, "That's part of the lesbian group." They must all be lesbians.
Right, yeah. That wasn't that long ago.
It was not long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Says a person who thinks 20 years ago isn't long ago. But
Same.
whatever.
It was
okay,
yesterday.
Guys, whatever. It was yesterday.
But I'm glad that
we are
come
your
a long
elders,
way.
And we're so glad that you're listening.
Yes. We are the witches.
Where can we find you? Where can we get more of you?
At Not Safe for Mom Group, though I'm not very visible there. I am this force behind it.
The listening force.
Yes. We have a podcast, too, called the Not Safe for Mom Group podcast. We just started it this year, and we bring on moms to tell the stories they would never say anywhere else or tell for the first time, anonymously if they choose. We also have some great authors. We had Angela Garbus on, which was really amazing. And so you can find me on the podcast at Alexis Barad-Cutler to, just watch pictures of my kids frolicking in the sand.
They're really cute.
Yeah. And at Chamber of Mothers, which is the nonprofit that I co-founded.
I'm so excited about that. And I'm so thankful for you.
Thank you. I'm really so grateful to be here. I've always wanted to spend more time with you, so this was really nice.
Well, in Brooklyn.
Okay,
yes,
here we go. Be better.
Yeah.
More efficient.
Thank you.
Thank you.